Welcome in to the I-80 Boys podcast. As always, I'm one of the co-hosts of this show, Chris Vaca, and be to the left of me, this is yours truly over here.
Beardless, like a newborn baby seal, Chris.
Yeah, you look so much younger, Christian. It's unbelievable, how young you actually look over there. Maybe is that diet working? You're thinning down too a little bit, bro.
I think so. I look skinnier. I look younger. Somebody thought I was 45, and I cut it immediately. I look like a homeless 45-year-old. I think was the words of somebody. So
that's awesome, man. But how's it going, Christian? What do you know, my guy?
Oh, it's going, Chris. This is the I-80 Boys College Football Springcast, episode number 2 here, as we're getting further yet into the spring college football season. The portal is ramping up. The spring games are going into full effect. We've got everybody at a fever pitch, just ready to watch some semblance of football. Chris, why don't we take a look back a little bit at some of the teams that have already played, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, sounds good, Christian. Who you want to talk about first? There was a slew of games last week, Saturday. A lot of good games on, or a lot of big name teams on as well.
I want to start with Ohio State and Ole Miss. The two pillow fights of the day, as it were. I think, watched both those games, and I came away unenthused by what they did. I think when you have a team like Ohio State, when you have a team like Ole Miss, what's been their biggest knock, Chris, over the last couple years?
Defense. Soft
defense. And when they play any kind of teams that are physical, like Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, they don't stand up to them. And I think that's why it's that physicality. Now, I think Ohio State had a pretty good defense last year. I would argue it was obviously top 5, definitely top 10 defense Ohio State had last year. When it comes to Ole Miss, though, they weren't anywhere near that on the defensive side of the ball. So the thing that I didn't understand is, and I'll let you elaborate more on this, but why were we having their pads were, they had to have been 5 miles away from that stadium. There was no semblance of actual football. It looked like a jamboree session that you would have as a kid, like at recess almost. I don't get what Ole Miss was trying to do or accomplish there.
Yeah, they had a slam dunk contest, a hot dog eating contest. I don't understand. I know it's good for the fans, maybe that want to watch some of these guys do some stuff, but I had made this comment to somebody else earlier in the week about this shit. I'm a college football fan. I expect to see some college football being played. Now, I'm not saying you got to full-on tackle the guy. We get that. But if you're a fan, and Ole Miss does have some question marks, and they got a tough schedule again this year, for example, man, I want to see guys hit each other. I want to see people go, ones versus twos and intermix that and see kind of what you got on both sides of the ball, Christian. And yeah, I'm not a fan of that. What it reminds me of is like the NBA All-Star game, which has been a complete, utter joke. The NFL Pro Bowl game, we know is a joke. It's been flag football out there. Nobody wants to watch that shit. That's why those games and All-Star games and stuff like that's dying. And they get a lot of criticism online about it. And I'll be honest with you, Ole Miss was horrible. Ohio State in the same boat for me. I turned it off after 5 minutes. I'm like, this is – I thought I was going to watch some 1v2s. And see some hard hitting, or at least high intensity football being played for at least a half. No, it was just 7-on-7 drills, dude. And I don't know. I'm with you on your point about Ryan Day. They did have a great defense last year, but they still got beat by Michigan. And we know what Michigan does. We've talked about this. I don't believe Michigan's going to change much this year as far as X's and O's wise. Yeah, Christian, I agree with you 100% on that.
Like you said, I don't think so either. I don't think they're going to change a lot schematically of what they're going to do. It's just going to maybe look a little bit different, right? Because you don't have the same guys, obviously, bullying people off the ball. A lot of them go into the NFL. Some of them have jumped in the portal. Is what it is. I think the big thing that I noticed with Ohio State that jumps out at me is quarterback. I really started to think about this. It's not for lack of talent. I mean, they still have, what is it, Devin Brown. They still have, they brought in Will Howard. They got Julian Sain, 5-star freshman quarterback from Alabama that was there for a minute. I mean, I think he was at Alabama longer than Bill O'Brien was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Need to get an offseason award going for him, by the way. Let's give him claps there. You know what I'm saying, man? Coordinator of the year, probably, by the time it's all said and done, even though he's at Boston College. But, I think the other side of it's Aaron Nolan. I mean, guys that are really talented but very young, and you don't really see that translating in today's game. That came in as a true freshman that balled out and actually made an impact was Trevor Lawrence. And that's one person.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, we kind of agreed on this. I'm going to talk about Ohio State for just a second here, but
yeah,
I think the reason why Will Howard went there, why they went after him, obviously was to play him first. I think he's going to be the starter. I do. I do think the Julian Sayin kid in the future is going to be really good. I do believe that, but I think we would all agree Ohio State's probably got the most talented roster in the country. I mean, you just from the running back spot, the wide receivers, every receiver class they ever have come through there is always, first round draft pick guys. We know that over the years. The defense is loaded as well. They got Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator. I mean,
yep.
I mean, you can say what you will about Chip Kelly, but the guy knows offense. They should be really good. But I'm with you. The one question they do have is a quarterback. We've asked this question, and you feel free to tell me whether I'm right or wrong. Is Will Howard that much better than what's his bucket that left there to go to Syracuse?
Kyle McCord.
I watched a lot of Will Howard at K-State. He was a good player. Don't get me wrong. He is. He's a good quarterback, but I do think he will be the starter to start the season. I think he'll actually, I think that's a good thing for a true freshman to sit for a year. Personally, that's just my opinion, especially when you got a veteran guy like Will Howard ahead of you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, a year from today, I will make two bold proclamations. Devin Brown will not be on that roster, and either Julian Sayin or Aaron Nolan will not be on that roster. If I had to take a wild stab, I would probably say maybe Julian Sayin. I think Aaron Nolan is kind of, again, Ohio State's in a good position to have. The issue is, and I think any of those guys I just mentioned have that ability to be fantastic quarterbacks at a place like Ohio State. I think where the issues start to arise, Chris, is, what does that mean for this year? Is Will Howard, like you said, he's a better athlete than Kyle McCord. I would make the argument Kyle McCord probably is a better thrower of the football than Will Howard. As controversial as that may be to some Ohio State fans, I think that, again, put Kyle McCord in the Big 12. Let's see what he would do down there.
I mean, and I want to add to this. Ohio State has got to be one of the hardest places to coach and even play at. I mean, the team lost one game. I mean, you count lost the bowl game to Mizzou, but Kyle McCord lost one game as a starter last year. He didn't play in the bowl game.
Yeah,
they wanted him out of there so quickly. I mean, I didn't think the kid was terrible. And that's the other thing. Ohio State's got this problem where they've had these great quarterbacks come through. I mean, Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud. It don't get much better than that other than maybe Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Ohio State, it's basically national title or bust. I mean, that's kind of where they're at. Obviously got to beat Michigan, but I mean, they're going to have Oregon now. I think they play each other pretty early in the season. Actually, that'll be a huge deciding factor on who wins the Big Ten or who's playing in the championship. But yeah, I'm with you. A lot of pressure on that quarterback spot this year for Ohio State. That was kind of their problem last year. They had a hard time scoring points, which is amazing to say for Ohio State. They did have Marvin Harrison last year. They got Travion Henderson back, Quinshon Judkins at running back this year. I do think the defense, I'm with you. I do think the defense will be really good again this year. I've seen a lot of preseason ranking polls as far as defense goes. A lot of people have them in the top 5. But yeah, so Ohio State, big question mark at QB. How does Will Howard look? And I'm with you. Eventually, some of those guys are going to obviously get off that roster and go start somewhere else. They're too talented. It's not a bad problem to have, though, if you're Ohio State.
Not a bad problem to have at all. Speaking of really good freshman quarterbacks, and this is we'll segue into Florida. Listen, Chris, I kind of had made a statement before that spring game. I said, look, I think out of all the true freshman quarterbacks that have stepped foot on campus this year for their different collegiate teams, I thought DJ Lagway, to me, had the best ability to be the best this year. And I still stand by that. I came out of that game, I was very impressed. I watched him throw first of all, he just looks like he's, a sophomore or junior in college already, just from the physical standpoint.
Big boy.
He's a big boy. I mean, he put a throw right on the money. It was a little post route, it looked like, kind of going just off the post to the corner there. And I mean, he was just able to kind of hit that kind of extended slant route or post route there just with like he laid it in between two defenders. And I thought that was one of the best throws I saw, out of that Florida spring game. Now, I thought Graham Mertz also looked really good in that game. Where I have other question marks about Florida is the rest of the team around them. I think, they've got some good receivers. I'm not going to sit there and bash the receivers. I think they've got good skill guys. The offensive and defensive lines, I think that's going to be a big question mark going into this season. But the biggest question mark for me for Florida is their secondary. At times last year, against Utah, I watched, third, fourth string quarterbacks dice them up. Now, Graham Mertz is good, but one of the touchdown passes that he had, like a 60 or 70-yard touchdown pass that he had, nobody in that secondary even came close to touching that wide receiver. I mean, the closest guy was like 10, 15 yards away. And he's speedy, and I think that's good, but it was a breakdown in coverage. I want to see Austin Armstrong in that defense. I want to see them start taking steps forward and not waste all this talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball. For me, Florida's offense is going to be just fine. As long as they can keep Mertz or Lagway upright, as long as they can establish the run, and as long as obviously they don't start doing what Bama did a couple years ago when they had talented wide receivers that were dropping the ball. Assuming that all that stands the test of time, I think it'll be all right, but the defense has got to take a step forward.
That's my biggest thing with Florida. I didn't get to watch a lot of that game. I know you watched a lot more of it than I did. And I will say Lagway did look good. I still don't think he'll be the starter to start the season. I definitely think it'll be Graham Mertz. But, like I said, injuries do happen. I do think DJ Lagway does have a very good chance to be a pretty good quarterback at Florida in the future for sure. I'm with you, though, defensively. They dropped the ball last year in a lot of games. They gave up about 40 to South Carolina last year. Who's the other game where they gave up? Kentucky just absolutely dismantled them. Kentucky didn't really have much of an offense last year. I'm with you, and I know it's this year, but defensively, they're going to have to really improve. And, God, we've talked about it at length already on this show last year, this year already. The schedule that Florida has to play this year is absolutely brutal. I'm with you, Christian. They're going to have to stop somebody. This is the SEC. They got a gauntlet of teams in there that can put up some points. But Florida, I will say, there are some bright spots. I mean, this is kind of a make-or-break year for Billy Napier anyway.
No, 100% agree. Let's segue a little bit into Alabama. That was one that I watched a good chunk of that game, just about all of it. And, I came away from that game thinking about this. I understand it's a spring game. What can you really glean from spring games? But I think the thing that I kind of got from that was, you remember when the national championship was played and Washington was getting bullied off the ball by Michigan?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I felt like watching this game. And I don't really remember a whole lot of times in watching an Alabama spring game where it was, it was so lopsided. I mean, Alabama's offense scored probably the first 4 times they had the ball. 1s v1s, 2s v2s, all of that stuff for you. So the defense just was getting knocked around. I mean, it was just a lot of mental mistakes. I understand it's a spring game. Alabama's still going to be good. And I made the statement last week. I said, look, I think Alabama, their offense is going to be a lot better than they were last year, but I think the defense is going to regress. They're going to go from having a top 15, top 25 defense like they did last year to, I wouldn't be shocked if they had maybe dare I say, a top 50 defense. And I mean, you think, middle of the pack in the SEC, for a defensive standpoint, that's kind of what you're looking at. But can they consistently win? I guess that's the question. The main games and the teams that try to out-physical them, going into this year. I mean, they're going to play Georgia. We know that. Georgia's a very physical team themselves. We'll talk about their spring game here in a bit.
Yeah, from what I saw from Alabama, I do. This was my couple takes. The defense, I was shocked about how bad they looked. To be honest with you, I do think that their running back room is going to be really good this year. I can't think of that kid's name. Is it Haynes?
Jam Miller,
And,
Justice Haynes.
Justice Haynes. Justice Haynes. He looked good. I do think he's going to be really good. He played a little bit last year, I think, too. But I'm with you there. Jalen Milroe. I was I was interested to see if they were going to throw the ball more. I know it's just a spring game. Daniel says it in the chat too. Some of this stuff is scripted. I know they want to use other players. We know what Jalen Milroe is, but I wanted to see him complete the short intermediate passes. I think he was 3 for 8. He did throw a nice deep ball in one of those series right away for a touchdown, but he missed on a couple balls. So it just – and Jalen Milroe, I'm assuming that they're going to use his legs. I actually think Jalen Milroe is probably the best running quarterback in college football. I do. I think he's one of the best athletes in college football. The kid's a stud running the ball. But I think the offense is going to be decent enough for Alabama this year, like you said. I do think the defense is going to be – I'm not going to say they're not going to be top 30 or 50. I don't know what they'll be yet. But, what I do think is they're going to have to get better from what I saw in the spring game. I saw some piss-poor angles. Some piss-poor tackle. It looked like guys were out of place, personally. I saw Nick Saban roping around in the background back there, probably rolling around. Like, the hell's going on? We know Saban's a defensive guru. I know he's not the head coach anymore, but he couldn't have been real happy because you're right. You did say something. I've watched a lot of Alabama spring games as well. Usually it's the defense that we're talking about in the spring game, just how good they look, how fast they're getting to the ball. 11 guys to the football. Didn't see that last weekend. So I agree with you on that take, though.
And I want to preface it with this. A good spring game, right? Like you said, what can you really gain from a spring game? What I look for when I watch spring games is evenness. I look for, okay, maybe there's a lapse and maybe the defense kind of gives up a big play here, but then they come right back down and they put the clamps on and they're able, it's even, right? That's what you want to kind of look at in a spring game, is both sides of the ball making plays. When I start watching Alabama, spring games, that's what I'm used to seeing. When I'm watching Alabama, their offensive line that wasn't that great last year, and they're mowing over guys, am I like, oh my God, that's the Kalen DeBoer effect, and the offense is going to be a perennial Alabama offense? No, I just look at it as the offense has gotten a little bit better than they were last year, but also the defense was just getting – they were getting blown off the ball. You know what I mean? In the entire first half of that spring game. So that's just kind of giving me some indicators there. And they've lost a ton of pieces on the defensive side of the ball. They have an all-new defensive staff back there. And, it wouldn't be uncharacteristic for them to take a step back. But, like I said, we'll sit down and we'll truly get to know what they are by week 3. And that's going to be entirely dependent upon how much of a stride can Wisconsin take forward going forward with Luke Fickell in year 2, because we won't really know what Wisconsin is either, because they're not going to play anybody for the first couple weeks either.
Exactly. No, but that will be one of the more interesting matchups, I think, of the year as far as non-con games go. I believe that, like you said, that is week 3. So, yeah, Alabama, I got some questions about them. But, again, like I said, you can't draw a straight line from the spring game to what the regular season is going to be. You just can't. It's the case. But I did see some things Alabama I liked. I definitely have some questions about the defensive side of the ball, though, like you said.
Yeah. Gator Swags has got a prediction for you. DJ Lagway gets a Florida national championship and a Heisman Trophy winner. I would say 2025 or 2026. Hey, laugh at him. Heisman Trophy, he's got the talent. He's got the talent to do it. Florida's got some skill, and Napier can recruit, but like I said, they got to keep it all together, and a lot of it's going to hinge on what they do this year.
Not a chance in hell. A snowball chance in hell.
If Napier can keep his job this year, he's got a shot. I'll put it that way.
I don't think Napier will ever win. One, he's not going to be able to keep his job. 2, you got to be able to win 10 games to win a Heisman. So I don't see Florida in the future doing that unless they have some crazy good recruiting class in the next year or 2. This is the SEC we're talking about. I can't get on board with Billy Napier. But hey, there's always hope.
Hey, segueing from segueing from Florida and Bama, let's talk about Georgia, the Bulldogs. Chris, I watched that game, and it's this is what I'm talking about. It's hard to really tell, you know what I mean? Like we're saying, in a spring game, what are we really watching? And what I took away from that was Carson Beck still is struggling throwing the football down the field. Why do I say that? Well, the first reason I say that is he just was missing wide open throws that should have been made. Easier said than done, obviously, sitting in the AC in my basement watching a spring game than being out there making the throws. But that was just too many forced throws. He just wasn't in rhythm. It wasn't what I wanted to see compared to last year, where in last year's spring game, and I mean, the ball didn't really hit the ground that much. Now, I do think that Georgia's defense is much better than last year. I'm not going to say, hey, they're going to be, like the 2020, right? The 2020 historic or 2021 historic Georgia defense that we saw there. But I do think that they're much better. The secondary didn't look like they were getting, manhandled. They looked like they were playing with the wide receivers. The wide receivers, I mean, I sent you that clip there with Dominic Lovett with that catch. I mean, those guys were just, they were just making incredible catches when they did score. So, and it was good. It was back and forth. I mean, I thought really for the most part, the defense was setting the tone. They were getting pressure on the quarterback. I mean, Carson Beck, another thing too, while we're still talking about it, he had like 4 or 5 balls batted down.
That was the big thing I saw too, Christian. I agree with you. Not to interrupt you there, but I was hoping you'd bring that up because the guy's like 6'4", 6'5". It's not like he's 5'8" out there,
Yeah, we don't have Stetson Bennett, you know what I mean, running from the Texas police. I mean, TCU defense, back there. But no, I agree. I mean, you're 6'4" and you have 4 or 5 balls batted down. Yeah. I mean, look, first of all, you got multiple 300-pound defensive tackles jumping up and batting the balls down. I mean, that's ludicrous.
Yeah.
I mean, I know because I still have a 36-inch vertical, self-reported, but it's very hard to jump that high up in the air to bat balls down like that, dude. I mean,
is that a mechanics thing, or is that just him not getting the right trajectory on the ball, or what? I mean, I'm with you though. He does struggle at the deep ball. He's really good at the intermediate routes and the short routes. The guy throws dimes, but I'm with you. He did miss some guys. There were some balls that I thought he could have made. I know it's just a spring game. I know that. I like Carson Beck. I'm very high on Carson Beck, but yeah, it was the batted down balls were that was surprising for me watching.
I think it's a mechanical thing. You know what I mean? A lot of guys nowadays, they like to kind of have this 3/4, this 3/4 kind of release throw. I was, again, about 100 pounds ago when I played quarterback, I was taught, hey, you want to kind of come over, you kind of have to get up and throw over to make some of those throws so that you don't get them batted down, which is kind of a tough thing to do, especially in the teeth of a defense that is big, tall, fast, et cetera, athletic, whatever you want to say. You've got to be able to kind of change that arm angle and get up and throw over them. And that's something that, again, the coaching staff has to really work with them on. They kind of have to develop them and bring them far along. I'm not going to base, again, a whole lot of stock into it. Just keeping with the tradition of what we're talking about here from spring games, I think Georgia's passing attack should still be good, but is Carson Beck going to be a Heisman winner or a Heisman contender this year? Based off the spring game, he's going to have to work on his deep passing. Let's just put it that way.
I still think he's a favorite to win it. I do. I think he's going to have really good numbers. He had probably the best numbers passing last year any Georgia quarterback had, and that was last year. I actually think the receivers are better this year. I do think you guys will be great on offense. I don't think that'll be the problem with Georgia, and I do think their defense is going to be better than it was last year. Georgia's defense, and I thought Georgia's defense was really good last year. Alabama kind of exposed them in that SEC title game a little bit, though, especially up front on the defensive line. I think they get that addressed this year. Like I said, I agree right here with I think it was Daniel put in there. Georgia's my favorite to win the SEC as well. I know this is a little early yet. We got plenty of time to talk about him, but I do like Georgia this year. I thought your guys' spring game looked all right. I thought Etienne looked good out of the backfield. I thought he caught some nice balls. Yep. I love that pickup. About time he plays for a better team instead of wasting his talent down in Florida. But I thought offensively though, I think Georgia's going to be real tough this year, Christian. They got some really good games that'll be interesting to watch this year with Georgia. But Kirby Smart, man. I bet you $100 he's still pissed off about last year because I still think Georgia might have been the best team in the country last year. No offense to Michigan. I wanted to watch that matchup probably more than any matchup last year, but I think Georgia will be back.
Oh, 100%. I mean, they got Roderick Robinson. They've got Branson Robinson, who didn't play in that game. But that guy, I mean, we saw him in the national championship against TCU. I mean, that's a man amongst men out there playing college football. They also have, like you said, Trevor Etienne. Georgia has 3 really talented running backs that, should they enter the portal, could start just about at anywhere they wanted to go. But it's one of those things where time will tell. Time is going to tell. I think Georgia's in a good spot. They're a physical team. The thing I really liked about that spring game, and we'll kind of wrap it up here, is when Aaron Murray went down on the field and he was talking with Kirby was still coaching. You know what I mean? I mean, Kirby has not taken his foot off of the gas pedal. He was kind of like, yeah, let's do this, and then the play would happen. He'd be like, all right, hold on one second, and then he would just still go into coach mode. So that's the main thing that you want to see. I mean, he's still locked in. He's still hot on the recruiting trail. He still's got it. Now, that's some bias, but we can move on.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll say this: Kirby Smart's the best coach in the country. I don't even think it's close. So,
bold prediction: Georgia over.
I like that.
Missouri in the SEC. I'm assuming that's the second title, but SEC title game. Yeah, I could see that. Mizzou, like Chris was talking about that. Mizzou is not going to be. They're going to be a tough out this year again. I think the thing Mizzou's been missing for a long time is confidence.
Yeah, I would also say it's Mizzou is a really weird deal because they were going to fire. What's his bucket? Drinkowitz before the season last year, basically. He was on the hottest of hot seats. And then they come out of nowhere and have that great, season last year. They beat Ohio State in that bowl game. And I'm with you on this. We did talk about this a little bit before the show with Missouri because I'm pretty high on Missouri as well. They didn't lose a single piece off the offense. And their offense was really good last year. I believe it was like top 10 or top 15 as far as the major categories. But you're right. Can they play a little bit of defense this year, especially, with the schedule that they have coming up as well? But is this, so I got to ask you this question, Christian, before I kick it over to you here. Was last year just a one-off crazy year? We see it, college football teams do it every once in a while. Or is this Mizzou's football? Are they one of the upper echelon teams in the SEC for the foreseeable future?
Sometimes, I mean, Chris, you like basketball. You claim to play it. You've been blocked by a kid that's 5'7" from what I've heard. But
wow.
No, some days you go into the basketball court, and you can't miss. Some days you get into a rhythm and you're good. And I think for a way that's kind of indicative of football, where football, it's you get into a rhythm, you have a magical season. Yeah, maybe you can't beat LSU. Maybe you can't beat Georgia on the road. But you still play them close, and you still have a great season overall, and you win a bowl game against who they beat? Ohio State?
They beat a good
Ohio State
team.
Who was kind of gutted at that point. But, you still have a great season, and then the offseason happens. And then you start reading your press clippings. You start losing some pieces off that team. You stop. The momentum stops. So my question is, can they pick up where they left off last year? Or to your point, is it going to be something where, like Gator Swag says, like Tennessee in 21 or Tennessee in 22? Is it one of those things where they take a step back this year because the expectations are now so high for them, which is, beating a Georgia or beating an Alabama and competing for an SEC title and making it to the playoffs?
Yeah,
I guess, you asked me, what do I think's going to happen? Yeah. I think somewhere in the middle. I think they're going to be in it, late, but I also don't think they're going to make the playoffs. As crazy as that sounds.
Okay. No, it's interesting because, like I said, we don't know with Missouri, right? They don't have a history of being a 10, 11, win team a season. They haven't done that since I can't remember the last time they won that many games. It's been a long time since they did what they did last year. I just think they were one of the more fun offense. I watched a lot of Missouri football last year. Won a lot of money on them too, just because I love Luther Burden III, who comes back one of the top receivers, who'd be one of the top receivers in the country again this year. But and they got that running back, I think too, and he was in the
Schrader.
Yeah, he was in the
Schroeder
Walker finalist award too, and then they got Cook back there at quarterback. I just think they're going to be a fun offense to watch, and like you said, yeah, defense is going to be a huge thing for them, going forward this season. But I like the Daniels a little bit on Missouri. You don't hear them talked about a ton. I think a lot of people think that was just an outlier last year. But I'm with you. It'll be interesting. Like I said, time's going to tell. But we'll see. Like I said, they got to go out there and prove it. They did play. They did play Georgia pretty tough last year. I know a lot of teams did at times, but they did play them pretty tough for 3 quarters. Mizzou did. So I got to give them a little bit of credit for the season they had last year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It'll be interesting, and we're going to be keeping an eye on it here at the I-80 Boys College Football Podcast. Chris, looking at probably last couple of spring games that have already happened, Utah, I just want to touch on them real quick. They're kind of a team that they kind of get forgotten about. Their coach, what is it, Kyle Whittingham?
Yep.
I think he's one of the most disrespected coaches in college football.
Would you say he does more with less than any coach of college football consistently?
1,000%. They put all these lists out of top coaches, and I get it. He hasn't won a national championship. But the guy, even in the Pac-12, which we know what the Pac-12's been, I mean, he's competed for the Pac-12 year in and year out at Utah with guys that nobody's heard of. He's been able to, even last year when they didn't have Cam Rising, he was still able to make them competitive. Yeah. In what was a very shocking, farewell to that conference, he was still competitive with second, third, fourth string guys. I just think, like I said, he's getting Rising back in that game. Again, Cam Rising, of course, he's 35 years old out there playing against college kids, but 15-19, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's not going anywhere, They go to the Big 12, which we know what that's probably going to be like. So, yeah, they're gonna put up some numbers, and they're primed for a good spot. Like I said, Utah might shock some people. They might monopolize the Big 12.
I agree. I actually think Utah will hands down win the Big 12 this year. I do. I think they'll be in the playoffs. So I'm with you, Kyle Whittingham, man. That guy gets disrespected, never talked about. He's been there forever. All he's done is win. I mean, the entire time. He's got a couple Pac-12 titles under his belt as well. People forget about that too. So I'm with you. Utah and Cam Rising, dude, like you said, man, finally got him healthy. Finally, he's going to play. Hopefully the kid can play a complete season because he is a pretty good quarterback. He really is. Yeah. He was a lot better than what they had last year out on the field for sure. No disrespect to those guys.
Oh, yeah. Gator Swag says, bold prediction, Georgia goes 9-3 and still makes the playoffs. I mean, the playoff part, I don't see how Georgia misses the playoffs. 9-3 is very bold because that would probably be assuming that they lose to Bama, Texas, and I'm assuming in this hypothetical scenario, you're going to say they're going to lose to Florida. But I'm going to tell you right now, from what I saw, Georgia will out-physical Alabama. It will look almost identical from just what I've seen, unless Alabama starts really investing heavily into their defensive side of the football. Georgia, and this is the thing you don't understand, you can't practice for that physicality. You can't practice for that kind of physicality. If a team is more physical than you, it's just not. There's not really much you can do. And Georgia will lay the wood on Alabama. Now, whether that means they're going to win or not, I don't know. Because again, it totally depends on Georgia's offense, as it has every time they've played. Can Georgia put up more than 30 points and beat Bama? That's the question that I got to see. The last couple times they played, it's whoever puts up more than 30 some odd points ends up winning that game. It's part of the rivalry, if you want to say it. Georgia is not better than Texas. I disagree 100%. Name me one position that you think Georgia's not better than Texas. What, you're going to tell me Quinn Ewers, a guy that can't even stay healthy through a full season, is better than Carson Beck? You're going to tell me Texas's running back room is better? You're going to tell me that Texas's O-line is better than Georgia's?
Talk about the defense.
Their defense is better than Georgia's? I mean, I'll give you wide receivers. But what good are wide receivers if Quinn Ewers doesn't have, 5 seconds to throw the football? Because remember, he isn't playing in the Big 12 anymore. You got to remember, Texas and Oklahoma, the reason why they're even relevant to this point is because they've had the advantage of playing a weak, watered-down schedule, week in and week out. So we're going to find out how good Texas is. And we're going to find out how good Florida is to that point as well. Because I'm telling you right now, if Florida's defense keeps leaving guys wide open with nobody within 15 yards of somebody, it's going to look like Utah week in and week out. Because segueing to the other team I want to talk about is Miami. And I'm going to tell you right now, Cam Ward is what DJ Lagway wants to be now. Okay? Miami also recruits really well. Here's a great stat for you, Gator Swag. Miami has had a top 10, top 7, for that matter of fact, recruiting class the last 3 years.
Yeah, Cristobal can recruit.
And he finally has a quarterback that I actually feel halfway confident with. Now, the coaching part of that and Cristobal's decision in games sometimes is probably about as bad as they get. See Georgia Tech. See a couple years ago when he was at Oregon and they fumbled. And they fumbled literally the game away.
Florida ain't beat Miami either. Week 1 or whatever week that is. I'm with you, though. I wanted to answer real quick on the Georgia-Texas thing. No, Georgia's a much better team than Texas. Georgia has proven it over the years. I do think Texas should be good this year, obviously. But, I'm giving the nod to Georgia all day long until they prove to me that they're not any good. I mean, Georgia's lost one game in the last, damn near 3 years. I mean, to a team in Alabama who was pretty damn good last year, was a physical team. So until then, give me Georgia. Yeah.
By the way, what year?
He's on 7, I believe.
7?
So I bet you didn't know this. He was actually at Texas first.
Yeah.
And then he transferred, if I'm not mistaken, to Utah, sat out that year. So he's been there since 2019, 2020. So he's got to be on, I guess, 6, 7. I think this has got to be like his 7th. I don't know if you count that first year, I think in 2019 or 2018 when he was at Texas. I don't know how that works, but
I mean, I don't even think he really did anything there. I think he just held a clipboard.
Yeah, exactly. But I always forgot that. I kind of forgot that he was actually at Texas. That's kind of crazy to think about.
Miami is not beating Florida. Miami is worse than Florida. Yes, Mario can recruit, but he can't coach and win ball games. Kind of like Billy Napier.
This guy, put the crack pipe down, bro. You're talking about Florida, who hasn't made a bowl game in forever. Let's be honest here.
No, I mean, I will concede this. It's going to be an interesting game. I mean, it's going to be one of those coin flip games because here's the thing. I think both teams arguably have good talent. Like they both teams have questions on the defensive side of the ball. They've got great skill players. Seemingly, both teams have figured out who their quarterback is going to be. But outside of that, it's kind of a coin flip because I'm not sold on either one as far as development or coaching or just when the games really matter. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I flip a coin, pick the game. I mean, that's probably what it's going to come down to. And Daniel said it best. Cristobal can recruit but can't develop.
Nope. He's exactly right. He can recruit, though. He does. He gets a lot of good fucking players in there. But, man, they don't get it in the win-loss category, though. And his coaching at end games, you just talked about that, is, Jesus, beyond questionable.
By the way, I want to segue to this, Chris. I'm sure you saw this, too. Give us your thoughts on this here in the chat, because I'm really curious. College football yesterday, I saw the news broke that they're going to a 2-minute warning, kind of very, very similar to the NFL, just like the NFL does. So, what's your thoughts on that, Chris?
I think it's a good thing. it does stop the clock. It actually saves you a timeout, essentially. You know what I mean? Because that's what the NFL uses it as. If anybody watches the NFL, especially late games, a lot of NFL games are close, no matter usually who's playing, but they use that spot as kind of a timeout. I'm all for that. I'm fine with that. It's going to piss people off because then they got to go to a commercial break right away, and then you know how that works. And then the next play they call timeout. But no, I'm fine with that, Christian. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I don't have a problem with it. I like it as far as that goes.
The first thing I thought was, oh, Jesus Christ, now we're going to pump in more commercials.
Yep.
That's really what this is about. Let's stop the game, get more commercials in. But look, here's the reality of the situation. I hear it a lot. There needs to be more of a developmental league for the NFL. I hear people say that all the time. Something to bridge the gap between college and the NFL. Well, here's the reality. It's college football. Kids are being paid. The rules are being mirrored to be the NFL now. Everything is basically, I mean, it's been this way for a long period of time. But my whole thoughts on the 2-minute warning is, you know what? It's in the NFL. It's part of the game. It's just another rule that we're changing to really drive the money sweepstakes home. So it is what it is. It should make it a little more interesting, I guess, because it's going to put more of an emphasis, even though we already see it, into those 2 minutes in the first half in the fourth quarter. So without taking a timeout away from, those coaches. So it could, in the world of college football, make it even more interesting, I think.
And that's why I like it. That's why I like good games. Like I said, it basically essentially saves you a timeout as well, like Christian said. So I think that's an okay thing. It gives you an opportunity to save one of those. And if you're in field goal range and you wouldn't have had the 2-minute warning, you'd had to burn a timeout. So yeah, now you got that extra one to kind of get it where you want to. And I like close games come down to the wire. It's always fun to watch, especially when you got two really good teams playing. So
and we saw that last year. I think it was against with Nebraska and like Iowa, yes, where there was timeouts called and some of those game managements very late in the game. It just it didn't make a whole lot of sense. So now really what this is going to do is it's going to expose the good coaches and the bad coaches. Right. Because good coaches will know how to obviously work that and they'll practice it. But then you're going to have some coaches where you're like, why the hell are you calling a timeout when you still have the 2-minute warning? I don't understand what you're.
You even see it in the NFL from really good coaches versus guys that really aren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Utilize that 2-minute drill. If you watch a lot of NFL, like I said, a lot of NFL games are really close. They just are. Mm-hmm. And boy, that last 2 minutes is huge because they can get a playoff and they can use that 2-minute warning as a timeout, essentially, thus saving you another timeout, which is crucial, especially when you get in the last 30 seconds of a football game. And, position on the field is huge.
Looking ahead here, and also, too, we'll talk about this. Helmets, they put helmet communication systems in now, so basically coaches are going to be able to communicate with quarterbacks. Are we going to see more Justin Fields? You remember the Justin Fields controversy to start last year off with the Bears? Where they said...
what was that?
Well, Fields kind of came out and threw some of the coaches under the bus. He's like, it's just kind of hard sometimes because they were asking, like, man, you don't seem like you're really you're thinking. It seems like you're thinking a lot out there. He's like, well, it's kind of tough, and I watched a lot of NFL guys kind of break it down, and what they said was happening was, Fields would get the play call, and instead of just getting the play call and just that's it, they'd be like, okay, yeah, and also make sure that you look for, if that safety starts, and they're starting to try to coach him on the field, and that was kind of causing him to think a little bit instead of go out and react and just play football, which is what a guy like Justin Fields does, right? So I think in some ways this is going to be good, but I think in other ways it could play a bigger impact into the game than what we're really just thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, that's what the NFL does anyway. You know what I mean? Constantly talking to the QB. I'm surprised they didn't adopt this a long time ago. So they can't cheat anymore. Well, yeah,
that's right. That's right. I mean, I'll tell you what, Michigan is kind of like that business. You know what I mean? Where somebody tries to dump on you, where they say, "Hey, man, if you want to invest in a really good, timeshare down in Florida, I got the perfect place. It's beachfront property." And you get down there and you realize it's 5 blocks from the beach. It's kind of in the middle of the bad part of town. You can't go out past 9:00 at night. It's just a terrible investment, and that's kind of what taking over for the Michigan Wolverines is like right now, right? Because they got all the issues, they got all the violations, they're getting just pummeled, and all their they still have talent. I'm not gonna say they don't have talent, but man, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens to Michigan. We'll probably put out a video of what we actually think Michigan's going to do a little bit later on here in the season, whether we think they're going to fall off a cliff or not. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's one thing if you actually have the best team in, you have one of the best teams in the Big Ten that's very experienced, where this is going, and you try to run the ball 50 times against Penn State. But it's a whole nother thing if you get down 17-0 and you can't throw the ball and you're still trying to run it down 17-0 against Penn State.
Yeah, Michigan. Yeah, well, like I said, we'll dig a little deeper on them. I know I got my thoughts on them. I'm gonna save that for another day. But yeah, Michigan, like I said, their spring game is on right now. I've been watching a little bit of it on the side here, but looks a lot of the same offense so that they wanted, what they ran last year, which I don't blame them. That's kind of what Moore coached half the season last year anyway for Harbaugh. So
looking here, it's like you said, Michigan's playing their spring game right now. Iowa also is going to be playing. They've already started their spring game. Let's see here.
Over and under, Christian, 9.5 points scored in that game.
You can take bets on you can take bets on spring games, man. That's
no, I'm sure some dying website probably does, but I had to throw that out there. You know how I love to give it to Iowa.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. Over under. You taking the over? You taking the under?
I'm going to take the over 9 total points scored in that game. So I don't know why, but I am. I mean, it's a spring game. It is Iowa, though. It might be a couple field goals, and that's all you're going to see for the day.
Oh man, we got Michigan. We got Notre Dame playing today.
Okay.
Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, USC. Chris, what do you want to see out of just some of these teams that we're mentioning here?
Texas, I'm not going to be able to watch because I'm not subscribed to the Longhorn Network. But how did they look? That was kind of something. We just talked about Texas a little bit. I'm not as high on them as probably you are. I know there's a lot of people. A lot of people think Texas is one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, and I'm not disagreeing with you. My thing is, defensively, how do they look now playing in the SEC? Like you brought it up just a few minutes ago, playing in the Big 12. My thoughts on the Big 12 year after year after year. It's a lot of offense. Nobody plays any defense. It'll be interesting to see if they get a little more physical this year on the defensive side of the ball. That's the big thing. I know their offense should be able to put up points without a doubt. Quinn Ewers back. The receiving core is great there. They always got a couple good running backs. But yeah, defensively. The other one I would like to watch, I'm not going to be able to watch it, is A&M. Christian, we clown on A&M a lot. They got Mike Elko as head coach. You know what he did at Duke? I thought he overachieved there. I thought he did a great job in his time at Duke. And that was a question that I wanted to ask you. Do you think A&M this year, will they be better in the future than they were with Jimbo Fisher? I know that's not an easy question to answer, but just with Mike Elko being there now and what he's going to bring, he likes to run the football, play really good defense. That's something A&M has always done a great job of recruiting, but never seems to put it out on the field though in the win-loss.
This year, probably more or less some of the same, kind of like Auburn. You know what I mean? Okay. I think the future is brighter. You give Elko 2-3 years, he's gonna be. Texas A&M will be in a better spot. Do I think they're going to be recruiting at the same level that they were with Jimbo? It may take a step back, but again, we know Elko can do a lot more with a lot less.
Yeah.
The thing about Texas A&M, they're not afraid to pay money. They're not afraid to throw money at their problems.
No, they are not. They probably have the most money, I would always say, in college football. You know what I mean? Seems like they have no problem spending it on anybody. I mean, how much did they buy Jimbo out for? $70 million? I mean,
yeah,
not a problem. Hired our AD, not a problem.
I mean, that's the thing about Texas A&M. They are not going to struggle to recruit, as it were. Regardless, here's the thing: if I was a kid, and you throw that kind of money that Texas A&M is offering at me, I'm probably not I'm probably not going to care. I'm still going to show up and, I'll come play for you. I don't care.
Yeah. No, you asked another question. Other than that, I mean, Texas is the big one today. There's a lot of them. Like I said, I've been watching a little bit of the Michigan one. Again, and I want to make this clear. You can't draw a straight line from a spring game to what the regular season is going to be. So, I like to see a little physicality out there more than anything other than the pillow fights we've been seeing out of some of these schools. I thought Georgia actually had a really good spring game. I like the way they played it, physical, let the guys hit for a while. I thought that was good. No glizzy eating contest out there from Kirby Smart. So, no, I think these things are good. My Huskers play next weekend. It'll be interesting to see what they look like as well. But, yeah, I think, I don't know. Spring games are good. I don't get too hyped up about them. I don't get too low on them, man. I just want to see some guys go out there, look like they're competing. I want to watch college football. That's what I want to see.
I'm curious. What about Indiana?
I think it's going to be tough there this year. I do, Christian. They got what's his name in there from what's their head coach's name? They got him from
the guy from James Madison. Yeah. I can't remember that guy's name.
But that it's good for Indiana though, because I think he will be able to recruit there. You're just going to have to give that guy some time. I truly believe that. What's his bucket ran its course there. Indiana's always been kind of one of the bottom tier teams in the Big Ten, but with these new teams coming over, the Big Ten has gotten a lot tougher now, with UCLA being added, USC, Washington, and Oregon. It's going to be tough. The same thing could be said about Nebraska and some of these other teams too, Michigan State. But Indiana will be interesting this year. I just don't think it's going to happen right away there. They're going to have a tough time. They lost some pieces last year too. So.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I think, like you said, I mean, it's just, but who really has lost pieces to their team at this particular point is Houston.
Yeah.
Every time I look into the portal, because I look at the portal every day, it's like another guy from Houston. I mean, I'll show you what I mean, just so you can see what I'm talking about here. Houston's one of those teams that, they got the Tulane's coach, Willie Fritz. Mm-hmm. And I get it, it's Houston, but Houston at one point last year, I thought they were looking pretty good, weren't they?
Yeah.
Or I was thinking about West Virginia.
No, you're thinking about West Virginia and the crazy season they had, because they weren't supposed to do shit last year, and then they turned around and they actually played Penn State relatively tough to start the season. Then they turned around and won a bunch of games in the Big 12.
So this is Houston as of the last couple days.
It's like they're cleaning house over there.
Yeah. And yeah, they hit
4-star guys and 3-star guys in there too. A lot of them.
Yeah, this is 24/7's. This is 24/7's. They do their own. You could have a 2-star guy in here that no one's heard of, but because he came in and he balled out at Houston or whatever and worked his way up the depth chart, that's what they're rating them as. There's a lot of guys that you're like, if you go back and you look at, for example, I think it's let's go back just to. Oops. It's like if we go back and we look at top, is it Cormani McLean? I think it was.
I wish somebody would land him. Called Nebraska. I would take him in a heartbeat.
Hey, he's available. He's floating around out there.
I know, dude. Mass exodus going on at Colorado.
Let me see. I'll pull it up here. We'll get back to it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Colorado too, man. There's a lot of talk going around Colorado right now.
Oh, hold on. I got to scroll down to outgoing transfers. Yeah, Cormani McLean. I mean, so he's a 4-star on here, but he was actually, he was the number 1 cornerback in college football.
Yes. He was.
Out of his class. So, Colorado, like I said, they picked up a lot in the. Deion's not wrong, which is kind of weird to say, but he's not wrong. Basically what he said was, what did we lose? And for the most part, he's right. He lost a lot of backups, but he lost this guy who was going to be fighting for time. He lost another edge player that I think played a little bit for him last year. He lost Kennedy, who transferred from Alabama. I mean, he's losing some guys.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is Deion's only got one more year left there, and he'll be done. So.
Oh, 100%. USC plays, Chris. Obviously, they're playing today at 3:00. So is Florida State's playing a little bit later at 4. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm Sports Media. Peace and respect.
Thank you, sir.
And we appreciate it.
Thank you for the
appreciate it there. Hoping Deion can go in and take care of some business over there in the Big 12 this year, obviously. And that's the other part of it too, Chris, where I feel like it doesn't really matter as much. You know what I mean? Because even though they are losing pieces, it's not like they have to go through the gauntlet of the Pac-12 again. I mean, I'll have to look at their schedule. I mean, I don't know if they're playing Utah, but I think they can match up pretty well with just about anybody else they play with.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions about Colorado. I just think defensively, if it's anything of what we saw last year, they're going to get blown out the water or be track meets week in and week out. I mean, I know the Big 12 is going to be easier this year than what the Pac-12 was last year, but Colorado's really centered around about 2 guys. And I don't know. My thoughts about Deion. I don't think he's a head coach. I think it's just a clown show over there. I mean, yeah, they bring in some good players, but he lives in the transfer portal. I mean, I think he's got 4 recruits signed, maybe. I mean, for this year's recruiting class,
yeah, but I mean, they pick up more. They pick up more in the portal. Obviously, they're prioritizing, I guess, experience, and because they need it now.
Yeah, but I saw that last year, and it to me they won 4 games. I mean, I still got Kansas State roaming around. I think those 2 teams are better than Colorado. Obviously, Utah. I think Arizona will be better than they will be. I just don't see Colorado. I mean, I honestly think Colorado will finish middle of the pack in the Big 12. They don't scare me. I guess we'll find out week 2 against Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to figure it out against Nebraska. I mean, but. Really, their schedule's not. I mean, like you said, Kansas State's going to be a good team. They're going to be a tough out. Colorado State, they should beat them. North Dakota State, they should beat them. Baylor, I don't even know what Baylor is anymore. It just is like the regular Big 12. Take your pick. What are we doing? Year in, year out. I don't even know how to really break Baylor down anymore. So. UCF, again, they're losing a lot of pieces. Kansas State, we'll see what they do. At Arizona, not going to be the same Arizona that we saw last year. Jed Fish, Cincinnati, again, Cincinnati's kind of on the decline. Texas Tech, they're kind of in the same boat as Baylor. Have a good year, then they're really far down. Utah, we already talked on them. That's going to be a tough game for them. At Kansas, that is going to probably be a very tough game. And then versus Oklahoma State to end the year off. So, it like you said, Colorado is one of those teams where they started off like the hottest team in the country last year because they were playing a lot of bad teams, and then they got into the bulk of their schedule, and it just went, it just kind of went sideways for them. But the schedule is more favorable, I think, and depending on what they can do, we'll see. We'll definitely see. I'm curious to see how the portal ends for them here. What do they do going forward now that we got another 2 weeks of the portal going down?
Yeah. I personally, Colorado 6-7. Maybe they make a bowl game this year, but that's just me. I know a lot of people are higher up on them than I am, but I think it'll be tough either way. Their defense was so freaking bad last year. You're going to have to really turn it around. I know the Big 12 can put up some points. I mean, they got some offenses in there. Oklahoma State can score. They bring a lot back. Kansas, Utah, Tech will be about the same as Colorado. Cincinnati's not absolutely terrible. You're right about Baylor. Central Florida, I don't even know what Central Florida is. I just know they'll beat Florida this year. And then you got K-State and Arizona in there. Nebraska is going to be favored in that game 100%. I can promise you that one. Nebraska should be able to beat Colorado this year. Like I said, I just don't see it for Deion. I think the writing's on the wall there. I just read another article about him. I just don't think there's any way he's back next year. Colorado will go right back to the toilet where they were. But I'm not trying to be a hater, but just give you my honest thoughts about Colorado.
Your favorite flavor of Gatorade? The Haterade edition?
Yes, correct. I just don't see it though, man. I just don't. They're too people centric, man.
Well,
nobody on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean, that would describe the bulk of most Big 12 teams every year, right?
It would.
Just one or two guys centric.
But man, damn, dude, I don't know. When you're Colorado and your defense finished dead last in the country, giving up 42 points a game, yay. That's tough.
Yeah.
Man. That's tough.
Yeah,
tough to win football games. I don't care how good Travis Hunter is. You can't play him both ways either for 140 snaps a game. You got to get the kid killed.
The most important game today, James Madison at 2:30.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. JMU.
Florida State, Chris, I mean, DJU is playing today. That'll be interesting to see kind of what he does in that spring game. They also picked up probably about half of Alabama's team, also in the portal.
I think their defense will be good this year. I do. I think their defense will be solid. Offensively is going to be a little questionable. They got a lot of people that transferred portal the year before. Coleman, Walker, all those dudes. It can be tough offensively, I think, for Florida State this year. I think it'll still be good, though.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Florida State's still going to be, they're going to be right up there in the ACC. They're going to be favored in just about every game they play. Should be a playoff team this year.
I would think so. I would think so. The ACC is kind of like the Big 12. There's a couple teams that are probably going to be really good. Clemson being one of them, I think. And nobody's talking about NC State or Virginia Tech, but it's pretty. God, you'd have to think Clemson, Florida State would both be up there at the end of the year. You would think.
I would have to think as well, yeah. I mean, Clemson, Florida State. Clemson, they already played their spring game. I think one thing that as much as it's easy to hate on Dabo in this day and age for not going to the portal. And as much as I think that is going to be his demise, I'm going to say this. I got to thinking about this the other day when I was driving into work, and I realized, Chris, that, I respect Dabo for doing that. Because when you commit to play for Dabo, basically what he's saying is, hey, I'm not going to go get anybody in the portal to replace you. I want you, and you're going to come here, and you've got an opportunity to play. I like it. He's trying to kind of do this to be honest to the kids he's recruiting. And I think, in a weird way, that kind of goes a long way with him.
Yeah, I like that he's loyal about it. I just wish he would use it, though, a little bit, because I think it could help him out. Especially on the offensive side of the ball, and get some goddamn receivers over there. Not a soul can name one receiver that plays for Clemson, which is amazing to me, because they've had a slew of guys come through there that were really, really good.
No, yeah, and ultimately, I think it'll be his demise. I think that's what's going to kind of be the thing that ends up costing him in the long run. But in today's day and age, it is still worth noting, I think. I mean, it is something that is respectable. I commend it, and hey, good for them. Good for Clemson.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Chris, it is currently 12:13. So
yes,
I think at this particular point, we got some spring games to watch. We got some stuff to kind of get to here, and we'll get her wrapped up here.
Yeah, that's all I got to add. I appreciate you guys showing up. Some of you guys, thank you for dropping some comments in there. Like I said, we're ways away from the college football season starting. I know a lot of us are super anxious. We got a ways to go, but we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of schedule breakdowns and stuff like that coming up within the next month. So, like I said, we're going to enjoy some college football today, some spring games if you guys can. But yeah, other than that, I appreciate the support. I know Christian does. Like I said, guys losing weight, by the way, looking like a young Brad Pitt over here now.
Looking more like a young Drew Carey. Young Drew Carey in the house, guys. We'll be back next weekend. Like I said, you guys take